All right. So we have Mike Henderson. Say hey, Mike.
Hey there.
God, you sound so excited.
I'm well up for it.
That's what she said.
It's because I'm sleepy.
You're sleepy.
Yeah, a little bit. I've got this hazy head feeling. But this is firing me up.
So let's just get right into it. Mirror neurons. Now, I just like when I started writing copy before I knew how to write copy, knew what mirror neurons were or that it was something I needed to tap into before I even knew what mirror neurons were. Now, we all want to connect. We all want to relate. We all want to feel a part of something. You ever noticed how, like I noticed with my daughter, I don't know if you notice this with your son. I don't know if he's at that age yet. Maybe,
Yeah.
probably. Where hang out, my daughter would hang out with her friends. And when she would come back home, she was a different person. She was saying different things, acting a different way, uh, having emotional charges about things that were never really there. And I would immediately see what she was taking on, what she was empathizing with, what she was mirror neuroning.
Mm.
And what we don't acknowledge if we're not aware of mirror neurons is that they are affecting us every second of every waking moment. We
Mm.
are identifying constantly with things. Now, as a copywriter, and I say this a lot in other webinars, but this is actually getting into the nuts and bolts of what makes a lot of my heuristic style work, mirror neurons. So the essence of this webinar, how to get people to do anything you want by tapping into their empathy. So mirror neurons are, in a sense, literally empathy. Now, here in this picture, this woman is yawning. And a lot of people, that's how they think about mirror neurons. I yawn, you yawn, you mimic me in some way, shape, or form. But that is just the very topical science. And there's a lot of people who say that the science that says mirror neurons or anything more than that are stupid, naive, reading too much into it. But there's more information than not that says mirror neurons are actually way more important than even the people that say it gives us empathy claim, because it's affecting us constantly. What do you think mirror neurons are? What is your impression just in this first few minutes?
Um, I mean, for me, it's like you like to think of yourself as a sort of autonomous person with your own characteristics and your own feelings. But I've always found in the presence of people, I very much feel their energy. There are the people who just lift me up automatically with the energy they bring, and likewise others where I just find there's just a clash, there's something that's not working, and it's a very unpleasant experience. So to a certain extent, depending on where you are in the world and who you're around, um, your whole sort of energy and chemistry changes. And I also find it with places as well, not just people. Like when I go back to my family house where I used to live, my personality would change almost instantly. So there was
Because you
this kind of,
immediately mirror the conditioning that you grew
exactly,
up
yeah,
with.
yeah.
You go back to that because that is the version of you who shows up when you're mirroring certain elements
Mm,
that you have been conditioned
yeah.
to
So
exist
I
within.
think just to end that, it's something I find very hard to switch off. It's seems to be on all the time, and you have to be selective about how you position yourself almost.
Absolutely. And just like the picture in the background, the water rippling, mirror neurons, when you tap into them, they have that ripple effect in the emotions. We start future pacing ourselves, we start imagining the circumstances. And we're going to get deeper into that because, I mean, this is just some incredible stuff. Now, mirror neurons, you said energy just a
Yeah.
minute ago. everybody has an energy, and we're going to get deeper into that. That's more probably towards the end, but everybody has an energy. You can tap it into it at any moment. We all have like a frequency calling card, just like, you know, this cell phone has a phone number. We all have a frequency. And when you are around somebody, you get to tap into that frequency largely because of mirror neurons, empathy. We feel somebody else. We feel something else. And very rarely, this is what's interesting. And this is what I discovered when I was just 9 years old. I realized I take on the emotions, the energy of everybody around me. When my mother, my sister, my brother were going through hardships, my mother, it was always about money and survival. With my sister, relationship drama, drugs, my brother, meth, drugs. I would take on that energy. And the sequel to this webinar is actually about remote viewing. Because when you start tapping into mirror neurons and you can tap into a frequency, I can be in Paris, France, and my girlfriend could be right here in this apartment, and she can tap into my energy at any time because she's got my calling card. And that's the kind of energy, the kind of rapport that mirror neurons create in marketing. Now, I talked a second ago about how there's a lot of science. Is it this? Is it that? That quote from Harvard, mirror neurons have been hailed as cornerstone of human empathy, language, and other vital processes. We are at the whim of mirror neurons, and most of us don't even know they exist or why we conform to the environment around us rather than being the one who influences the environment around us. As copywriters, it's our job to influence the environment around us, digitally speaking. And we're going to get into specifics about how to do that. Now, the thing about empathy, the thing about mirror neurons is it can really weigh on you. I go back to when I was 9 years old. I asked myself this question: what does it feel like to be me? And I would let my body answer. And I just did that a lot until I got this essence, this frequency, this vibration that I can tap into at any time. And then it could start pushing away all of my empathy, all the stuff that I feel, and not be so overly sensitized to it that it cripples me emotionally. This picture of me and my mother, she and I were very connected. She wasn't a great mother, but she was an awesome human being, a great best friend, and really helped me be okay in the world. And when she got Alzheimer's, when she developed Alzheimer's, it was emotionally devastating for me because we were so connected. I was also going through the experience. You know how like when a husband has pregnancy, ghost pregnancy, labor pains, and all that type of stuff, because he's mirror neuron.
Yeah.
He's empathizing. And
I was going to say that's a really powerful photo. And even not knowing the full story, you can't help but be affected by something in the eyes. You know, there's a lot of depth to that. I can sort of see what both, you know, there's some kind of conflict there. And
well, I had to be there for her. I was the only one who showed up for her out of everybody who ever existed in her life. All her other children, brothers, sisters, friends, none of them showed up for her. So, but for me, it was hard to be around her. It was like when I would go see my mother, I would immediately go straight from the memory care facility to the bar. And I would cope the shit out of it because I was in it too much and I couldn't shut it off because we're so connected. And it felt wrong to just turn it off because I felt like I needed to be connected with their energy, even though it was
Yeah.
emotionally crippling me. And I'm still recovering. She died 5 days before my birthday, 6 days before my
Oh,
birthday,
shit.
before my
Yeah.
40th birthday last year.
Yep.
And her death was beautiful. We were staring at each other for the last 30 minutes of her life, and I watched and I felt her lights go out as if it was mine, because I can mirror neuron with death because I physically died when I was 9 years old and then
Yeah.
again at 11. So I know what that feels like. And so my mirror neuron was at a fever pitch, and it impacted me so much, that empathy, that I'm still cleansing it. I'm still back processing it. Like what we do with creative, when we
Yep.
research, we back process and then everything comes through. I'm still back processing it. You know how we talk about the gestation period for becoming successful? Well, what's the gestation period for letting go of mirror neuron triggered trauma? When you empathize so much,
I think it can become cyclical within you, can't it? Like these things that you hold on to and perpetuate, they can last as long as they're going to last, a long time. Yeah,
there's no gestation period for letting it go. I could let it go today. I could let it go tomorrow. I could have let it go yesterday, but I'm still processing it because it's so, you know, how you talked about conditioning. Well, the conditioning I grew up with is tied into the mirror neuroning that I had when she died. So there's so much to unwind. And it's painful and it's traumatic, and it's also an amazing opportunity because as I go through this journey, so many other things become available. And that's what we do as advertisers, as copywriters, as entrepreneurs. When we connect with people, when we connect with their empathy, when we empathize with them and we trigger the mirror neuron effect, we're giving them the opportunity to change their lives, to stop being stuck in whatever it is that they're stuck in, because we all want something else. How are we going to get there? So mirror neurons are not your emotions, just like I talked about with my mom. You know, I took on her stuff when I was 9 years old. I was taking on everybody's stuff, and it was really super difficult to feel like me. What did it feel like to be me? I had no idea because I was so immersed in everybody else's experience. So it took me, you know, like that exercise. What does it feel like to be me? There are ways to identify empathy and then to start filtering out what isn't you, so that you can be super clear as an entrepreneur, as a human being, as a creative. If you're overwhelmed and bombarded by this, see, another reason that it's so important to know about mirror neurons is also to protect and shield yourself so that you are a more effective copywriter.
Yeah.
So that you are a more effective human being. Because when we're bogged down, when we're anchored by all of this empathy, it really does make us a shell of who we can be right now. Do you agree with that?
I do. And like, I would say at this point here, mirror neurons are not your emotions. It's something that I'm still grappling with. You know, I don't fully know how to separate.
You want to take care of your son. You mirror neuron and he mirror neurons with you back and forth instantaneously and simultaneously, without beginning and without end. And it's always gaining momentum. You're mirror neuron with each other because your relationship is so connected. You see yourselves in each other constantly because you love each other. You want to take care of each other. You want to make sure each other is okay. He feels the same way that you feel about him. He wants everything to be okay. You want everything to be okay. And because of that, we twine. We tangle. They call it tangled hierarchy. Whose experience is it when two people are having an experience that we're both empathetically, psychically transmitting back and forth? Whose experience is it? It's always my experience. Remember that. Empathy can be empowering and it can be crippling. It's a double-edged sword, But the first step is realizing that these empathetic sensations and things that go through the mental movie theater in your imagination, this could be, that was, this is what is, oh my God, all those things can be cleared away just by acknowledging that they are the result of mirror neuroning with other things. What are you mirror neuroning with? We're going to get deeper into that.
And when you said you thought when you were 9 years old, what does it feel like to be me? Is there a way that did you just isolate yourself until you found that energy?
For me, it was so overwhelming that it was just like hitting me over the head constantly of being bombarded by other people's energy.
Yeah.
And I had to do something about it. I was aware enough to do something about it. As kids, actually, we have a lot more awareness than as adults because we shut down and think that it's XYZ that gets us to ABC. We just convince ourselves it takes this, and this to do that. It's not true, but we're stuck in it. We're telling stories, and those stories are based on conditioning and what we mirror neuron with. If you're in a state of scarcity and poverty, you're going to mirror neuron with everything in scarcity and poverty. Those symbols are going to hit you harder because that's the story you're telling. And this is where the integration of heuristic copywriting and mirror neurons really marry. So as a marketer, knowing that mirror neurons are affecting people in every aspect of their life, like in this quote right here, where we talk about mental health a lot, right? Mirror neurons are in the gut and they're in the first brain, second brain, first brain. They're in both brains. So when we have a gut feeling or a gut symptom, that's our mirror neurons being fired as well. We can even mirror neuron with our own experience. You can look in the mirror and mirror neuron with your own emotions and create momentum in wherever you're going, wherever your attention is taking you. And again, we have that ability, speaking of schizophrenia, being a psychopath, anxiety, sleeplessness. A lot of it is because of mirror neurons, because we're taking on so much that we're bombarded and we can't relax. So there's a lot more than just nutrition at play here. By the way, we break things down intellectually, but the body doesn't. The body doesn't look at things as emotional, spiritual, physical, mental. It's all one integrated mechanism. These are just labels and terms that we put to break it down to, in our feeble human minds, understand it a little bit more. But it's all one thing. It's all one integrated mechanism. So when you realize that, you're aware of your own mirror neurons and empathy, and you're aware of the mirror neurons and empathy that your prospects are feeling, the story they're telling, it empowers you to be much more effective in how you build your campaign, how you build your copy. So right now, as you start through your copywriter's 3D lenses, seeing what neurons do in your life and what they do in your clients' lives and the lives of the prospects that you're selling, whether it's selling prospects on you or selling their prospects on whatever copy you're writing to sell their product or service. You're mirror neuroning with that ability. As we get deeper into the specifics about how to apply it, you're going to mirror neuron with it even more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's important to always be aware about how you experience something so that you can communicate it and convey it in any way, shape, or form in any conversation for any audience. I have been aware of and feeling my empathy since I was a little boy. That's why in my process of self-teaching and growing up, because I didn't go to school, it was observing how I felt in response to other people and circumstances that taught me more than anything I could have ever read in a book. Instead of just being a participant, I was always an observer in my own experience. And I still do that today. That's the majority of my education, because the more that we're aware of, the more that we can isolate, the more that we can trigger.
Do you think personality type has a role as well? Because depending on how you react to people, how much of an impact it has, how strong your empathy is, you may have to adopt different coping strategies or mechanisms, or do you think it's
like a lot of people who are extreme empaths shut down, and they almost seem like they are without empathy, sociopathic,
because they've consciously shut that down because it was too painful? Or
yes,
okay,
too much empathy can make people hateful, angry, vengeful, and just emotionally unavailable. I can't handle any more, they think. I can't handle any more. I can't do this because then I have to take care of him. I can't do that because then I need to take care of them.
Yeah.
And
if you can't deal with someone without absorbing some of that energy, whatever it is that they're bringing, and you don't want that, at a certain point you're going to resent that, right? It's going to be, if you actually can't put that boundary in place, you're just going to react to it negatively, and that's perhaps where that cutoff comes.
Yep. So mirror neurons, we, like I said, talking about scarcity, we empathize with what we want and what we don't want, depending on where our attention is. So as a copywriter, and we have the ability to position our copy to enter the conversation at any point, we also have the ability to command somebody's attention. So if their attention is directed in a certain way, they're going to mirror neuron in a certain way, right? So knowing in this example, if I'm overweight and my attention is focused on feeling fat, I'm going to mirror neuron with fat stuff, with overeating, with gluttony, with a lack of self-control, with the story that no matter what I do, I fail at controlling my cravings. And I'm going to mirror neuron the shit out of that. As a copywriter, you know that. So you have to identify specific things that I mirror neuron so that you get my attention. That's the agitation. And then it's called oscillation. You shift it to what they do want. Grab the attention, lead the attention. All by being aware of certain mirror neurons. So once you grab the attention, then you need to give them something to mirror neuron with what they want, so that you're leading their attention and you're triggering these specific empathy points, or their conditioning, or the story they're telling, however it is that you want to imagine it or describe it in your own mind, right?
Yeah.
This is me. I really love spaghetti. I love the way it smells, the way it tastes. It brings me back to when I was 3 years old. I just talked about this on a live, sitting there on the living room floor watching pro wrestling. So when I see or smell spaghetti, because of my association, it's a symbol. Remember, heuristics is the science of association and symbols. Well, this symbol allows me to, and then the statement allows me to remember what I loved as a kid, what I mirror neuroned with. So if I'm selling a fitness product or a diet program, then I get to help people isolate why they crave these foods, a new cause.
Right. Yep. Did you see the Disney film Ratatouille?
I didn't.
No, okay. There's a scene where that exact thing. He tries the dish, and it takes him back in his mind to his childhood and his mom cooking for him at home, and that kind of hearty eating, the kind of comfort food stuff.
Yep.
It's just a really, really nice depiction of like everything that goes with it. That the whole feeling side of the dish and the smell.
Again, we associate, we mirror neuron, we empathize with what matches our conditioning, what matches the story we're telling, what matches our beliefs and judgments and feeling about consequences, fear of certain consequences, hoping for positive consequences. All of those things are up for grabs when we write copy. It's a matter of how we connect with them, how we empathize, and therefore allow people to empathize or mirror. Great example of the Ratatouille. And it's just like I could be walking down the neighborhood and catch a whiff of something, and I'm immediately holographically in my mind there.
Yep.
And
I think smells are way more powerful, aren't they? They're more evocative than any other sense. Is that right? Which is something we can't work with.
I mean, everybody has their. I mean, smell for me is definitely a very acute, visceral sense. Seeing and hearing, touching. I mean, everybody has their thing. I'm probably more of a touch guy.
All right.
So, what I want, what I don't want, what I want, what I don't want. Oscillation. Karate Kid Part 2. So, I want to tap into if let's say I'm writing a promo for women who haven't found their soulmate. I'm experiencing, as let's say a 40-year-old woman, I'm experiencing disappointment. I've given a lot. I haven't experienced men showing up for me and giving back. What's going to bring them back to their childhood? What's a cliche. Remember when you were a little girl and you imagined going shopping for that perfect wedding dress, trying them on, feeling the magic of meeting Mr. Right, meeting your Prince Charming, and moving towards your own version of happily ever after. Do you remember that? What happened? Mirror neuron. How would you approach a relationship promo selling to women who want their soulmate, they're 40 plus, and they've already experienced, they've been around the block, they've given, they've been taken, they've fallen in love, they've hated the person they've fallen in love with. Can a man still be my soulmate? Can a man still show up and be that knight in shining armor? How would you trigger those mirror neurons?
Good question. I'd try and tap into that sense of fatigue and disillusionment, and this idea that, do you have it in you anymore to still carry on carrying that hope? Opening yourself up just to incite more and more disappointment. I suppose that kind of sense of hopelessness, really.
But again, you got to get specific. Like, have you been in relationships where you love him and you give and you give and you give and you give because it feels good, but then he doesn't give back, and you're like, why am I giving to this person? The man that you want, who will give to you, who will give 100 times more to you than you give to him, is out there. Can you see him? Can you remember back when you were little, when you were young, before all of these relationships tainted your perspective, how much you knew in the core of your being, of your spirit, of your soul, that he is on the planet right now waiting for you? And all you need to do is open back up to the knowing, to the possibilities that you experienced when you're younger. So what if we could erase all of that negativity, all of those negative emotions, all those negative stories that push the man who's still out there waiting for you away? Now you can. Mirror neurons. Before I move the slide, suspension of their own disbelief. We're inviting people to suspend their own disbelief, to be involved in the conversation, to feel open to it. Yeah?
So this is going to be getting into the new cause as well, right? Because
exactly,
again, so much disappointment.
You're able to integrate new cause. You're able to integrate new cause mechanism into this very concept. You can isolate anything that you want in terms of a mirror neuron and then integrate it with a different element or two different elements, right? It's not hard to do. You're only limited by the ability to know what those mirror neurons in fact are.
Yep.
Let's see, you've got Sean leaving us a few comments here. What is it?
I really.
If I click my fingers, do I create a mirror neuron? So the mirror neurons is essential, the key to knowing and understanding the stories people are telling around the product solution you're selling, right? Yes, absolutely. It's association, it's symbols. We respond, we have emotional charges to things that we associate with, positive or negative. With symbols, we associate with positive or negative, right? So it's knowing what those symbols are that are going to get a person's attention the fastest and keep it when you're selling them something, when you're inviting them into an advertising conversation. And yeah, Sean, you're not always trying to bring them back to the past, but you're trying to reconnect them with the true essence, the energy, the emotion of their deep desire, so that you can overcome objections, overcome resistance without actually having to identify what those resistance and objections necessarily are. You're knowing what I mirror neuron with so that you can get me in alignment with it. And again, oscillation. If you want to agitate, the only reason to agitate is to create certain symbols that remind me of something and then oscillate it or shift that contrast over to the positive, the negative to the positive, and say, now this. So you're using mirror neurons so right here, my story in 15-minute manifestation, for instance, trigger a lot of people's mirror neurons. Now, a lot of the mirror neurons that were triggered was, I don't want that to be my experience. I fear it. And that fear is a symbol. It's a symbol of what they don't want. So I'm getting people to mirror neuron to empathize with everything they don't want by telling them what I went through. So I'm allowing them to be on my journey without actually having to experience it themselves, but they're going to identify certain aspects of their fears or their story, of the story that could become based on the devastation, the hardships that I went through and had to overcome. And that makes the solution all the more amazing, because now that I've told them the worst thing that can happen and how I overcame it, now they want that solution more, because they don't want to go through that pain that they've associated in their mind, the symbols that they came up with in their own mind about what could be that worst case scenario for them. That's why it worked. That's why we tell stories. When I say you're giving people the opportunity, how many times have I said this in the course of working with you or Copywriting Miracle, to give people the chance to see themselves in your story? That's what it means. Mirror neuron, seeing the reflection of whether it's the same experience or not. I'm picking the symbols, the associated points that bring me to my past experience. And as a copywriter, you're the leader of my attention. And you need to lead my attention. You need to know how to capture and lead my attention. And it needs to be deliberate. So the more associations and symbols that people are telling are likely to identify and connect with and empathize with and see themselves in, the more that you're able to capture and lead their attention and constantly create more and more and more momentum. But it has to be authentic, it has to be vulnerable, and it has to be specific. Because that's what triggers those associated points heuristically in the story I'm telling, the narrative I'm telling in my life.
What part of your story do you think resonated with people the most, where they really saw themselves?
Just in that innocent little kid with a big chew-fro, just trying to take care of himself and his family in the midst of being homeless. And the empowerment of finding the way to do it.
Yeah.
without anybody coming in to save the day. I was my own hero. It's the hero's journey. And we're all on our own hero's journey. So knowing what hero's journey people are telling about the subject matter that you're having a conversation with them about is critical. Tapping into mirror neurons is the ultimate kind of influence. Again, if you know what symbols I associate my story with, you can manipulate the shit out of me. And I don't say that to be evil. Yeah, copywriters definitely manipulate the shit out of people in ways that are not authentic, that are not real, that are not in integrity. How you doing, Agora? So we know that's out there, and those are the non-compliant chicken shit copywriters who, instead of getting to the real, they get to the fake to trigger the real, even though it's just hogwash. Mirror neurons are triggered by symbols and stories. You know, here's the friends, the camaraderie in the left-hand corner, the plane traveling, the Coca-Cola that I associate with for satisfaction and sugar, the money that symbolizes financial freedom and being able to do anything I want. Know your audience's symbols. Me too. This is what we were talking about when I started talking about my daughter, how she would come home and she would just be this completely different person. We naturally mirror what is the strongest influence around us. So if a person has a big energy, a big presence, has a lot of charisma, whatever you want to call it, they're going to be the most influential person in that group, and everybody's going to mirror them. And that's when I fell for the leader of the pack. That's what it means.
It's like about you being the sum of the 5 people closest to you, right? It's
Exactly.
the same idea.
Are you the product of your environment, or is your environment the product of you? It depends on how aware you are of your own mirror neurons and how in command you are of them. You're always becoming where your attention is right now. That's what that means. What mirror neurons are you focusing on, and how are they reflecting themselves in the reality of your experience, in the reality of your relationships, in the reality of your business? It's super important to be aware of what triggers your mirror neurons. Write them down. Integrate it. Because the more you can identify in yourself, the easier it'll be to observe and identify in others. What activated your empathy? When you feel that empathetic reaction during the course of a day, log it, write it down. I did this. This is what I felt. The more you educate yourself and make yourself aware of what it means to you, the more that you're able to influence it upon others. So capture the essence or frequency. You know, like everybody has a unique calling card. Well, a personality type is an essence, an energy, a frequency. What is that? How do you tap into it? Apply it to your copy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's starting to make sense.
That sounded like a yeah question mark.
Well, no, it does make sense, but as you're talking, I'm traveling into my own experiences, my day-to-day experiences, and seeing
that's what I want you to do. You're
exactly,
a mirror neuron.
Yeah, exactly. How I kind of apply it, and how there's a million and one ways where I'm not doing enough of this. So yeah, it makes me think.
So I've made a lot of money for people because of being aware of mirror neurons. It really is my secret weapon, and I've even used it in campaigns, like in a dating campaign. You want to circumvent the story women are telling about men, then you need to trigger specific mirror neurons and have them associate those triggers with you. Dopamine response, addiction, pleasure, reward. Do you want to reach the moon for the moon too, like I did? That's a mirror neuron statement. It's inviting you to see yourself, in my experience. That's a powerful, and we're going to get more into directional statements and questions, but that is a directional question. And it's meant to trigger the symbolization of specific mirror neurons. climbing the ladder to the moon, climbing the ladder to success, being autonomous, being free, having fuck you money so that if somebody comes into your life that you don't want, fuck you. I don't need you. You need me because I know this. The second point here, they connect with and or circumvent the story your prospects are collectively telling. Again, I want you to imagine, like, here I am right here, but right in front of me is a wall. It's right here, but the wall has, it's just the facade, right? It's just right in front of me, but you can easily get around it. So that's what mirror neurons do. They go around the wall and how you doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It just takes you for a moment into an alternative realm, doesn't it?
Yep. So we pretty much covered this. Don't need to how to use mirror neurons in your marketing. So let's get into some specific examples, which is what Sean was just asking. Here's some copy. Do you remember how it feels to wake up and see a young face in the mirror staring back at you? They're immediately thinking back to when they were 16, 17, 21, 24. I remember. Yeah, it felt good. This is me. I used to love surfing. I wish I can get my body healthy again and get back to what I love. Opening it up for, like what's a top product on ClickBank? The hip flexors campaign, the psoas. I could use, there's a unlock your hips.
Oh,
yeah. It's like I could use that line and copy to sell unlock your hips. Do you remember when your mom and dad told you everything's gonna be okay? Do you remember how it instantly gave you that sigh of relief? Well, what if you can get that same calming feeling just by listening to this, selling binaural beats? Just telling people that you can feel safe again. You can feel like everything's okay. And you can empower yourself so that you're not dependent or codependent on anybody else to give you that feeling. How amazing would that feel? So we oscillated. We took them back to the symbols and associations of when they were kids and how they feel unsafe now, because when we don't have everything we want, we don't feel safe. And we want to feel safe. Do you see the power in that?
Yeah.
You've been dreaming about getting...
Yeah. You've been dreaming about that and not relate it to yourself and not start to have that mental imagery, can you? Yeah. Even like the surfing, I've never surfed, but like already the pictures in my head are there. I can't get rid of them. And,
or you associate it with what you love doing, and getting back to that.
Or a trip I've taken, a place I've been, all these things.
Exactly. We already did the marriage thing. Why have I and other top copywriters become 6- and 7-figure earners while you're still scraping the bottom of the barrel? That's going after copywriters. Sell them something. A lot of copywriters feel that. Why is this person? I have so much value. If I could just get the right people in front of me, I know that I could make money and make them money. Damn it. See the story they're telling and how to capture a symbol or an association that triggers it? So ask a lot of questions, and then behind our little videos here, ask a lot of questions and make a lot of directional statements specific to your awareness about what mirror neurons you're going after, what you're trying to trigger.
Do you think, like say the last one in particular, you see a lot of this type of stuff out there? Are people becoming a bit more immune to this type of ploy, or is it always going to float?
It's all in the specificity.
Okay.
Capitalism in and of itself is not evil or good. It's how it's used. Mirror neurons can be cliche or revolutionary. It comes down to you as the copywriter and how aware of what mirror neurons you're isolating and tapping into and how you're doing it and where you're taking it. That's what makes us worth millions of dollars, is being able to easily put those pieces together so it's not a cliche, so that you're not doom and gloom because you're affected by all the shitty claims that other copywriters have made in the past and made that market, made those people, those prospects feel like, oh, seen this shit before. Because when you make somebody feel real, again, you're circumventing all of that. That's the point of it. So again, mirror neurons are what make this whole copywriting miracle, the heuristic copywriting style, this system is what makes it all work. People see themselves in you, see themselves in copy. If you can't get somebody to, if you can't activate the holographic mind, that mental movie theater, the imagination, so that people are future pacing themselves, seeing themselves in the past, creating some sort of empathetic connection. We can do it verbally in person. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. How do we do it in writing? That's your job, to ask those questions and get to the core and integrate your mirror neuron techniques with new cause and mechanism so that it has gravitas, it has weight, it has a reason to exist. There's a why.
So this is quite closely linked to the dog whistle language as well, right? You know, where we went through the Amazon reviews and like, hey, that's a really
apply that to this.
Yep.
So I'm kind of ending it off here because this gets into the more woo-woo stuff. We're energetic beings. We emit energy fields, electromagnetism. Link your brain up to electrodes. You know, there was a great Deepak Chopra piece on, God, it was Ancient Aliens. And he put himself into a delta state deliberately, and it was all captured. How he activated certain parts of his brain that very few people can deliberately access.
Wow. Delta's deep sleep, is it? Or?
Yes. Yep. Deep meditation. Yes. Deep sleep. It's that meditative state. It's where the delta theta is where the body goes through a lot of its rejuvenation and regeneration.
Yeah.
But when the brain lights up like that, it changes the frequencies that we emit. It allows for a real transformative change to take place. Just being aware of it. Just being aware of how we are energetic beings, because we get so locked up in circumstances. But as copywriters, as entrepreneurs, as leaders and influencers, we need to realize that, yeah, we're energetic beings and we feel things down to the energetic and frequency vibrational levels.
Yeah.
We each have our own measurable frequency. Every product and service has a measurable energy and frequency. Every campaign you write has a measurable energy and frequency.
So I guess when you're sitting down to write, if you're trying to reach out to a certain energetic type or mirror someone's feelings, you kind of need to be in a state that's fairly similar to that, or you want to not be in a frame of mind where you're going to struggle to speak on that level, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, like Sean just asked, what's your process of identifying the mirror neurons associated with the product? So again, you're always going to the core. What do they really want? Okay, here's the story they're telling. I get it. How did they get here? Deconstruct it. Go back. Now put them into an archetype. What archetype is this person? And what is the hopes and dreams that they really wanted when they were younger, before all this story and conditioning overwhelmed them and took over and created resistance and blocked everything they want and sabotaged everything they want? What is that?
Yeah.
And then start getting specific. You know, start writing down questions and directional statements. Just break it down for yourself. This last comment, there is no separation in quantum physics. Everything is connected by the 0 point field. It's a measurable field of energy, and everything is derived from it. Some people call it the God particle. It's a measurable field of energy. And just like emotion, we're all being affected and affecting it instantaneously and simultaneously without beginning or end. And it's always creating momentum. This energetic field is always creating momentum. There's two forms of it, waves and particles. And what collapses, so the waves are infinite possibility. Einstein talked about the waves of possibility. And in the particle, that's when the observer collapses the wave function, collapses unlimited possibilities, and delivers it into the particle, the finite experience. But everything we want already exists in the waves of possibility. So we have to take our attention off of the particle, because the more we put our attention on something, the more we become that, the more that experience becomes in our lives. We have to take the attention off of the particle so it can go back into possibility. And we're helping people do that oscillation. Isn't that amazing? Think about that.
Yeah,
I'm going to go deep into that later in another webinar. And that's really going to be a woo-woo one. So
yeah.
any
I'm still
books on
getting my head around that.
archetypes? Yeah, Sean, anything Carl Jung. Jung spelled Jung. Start reading his stuff now. I read his stuff when I was a teenager, and it had a huge impact on how I show up, how I created my world, how I directed my attention, and why. This makes us powerful as leaders, as copywriters, as influencers, makes us more valuable to the people who hire us, and makes us more valuable in selling, creating and producing and developing and selling our own products and services. Any questions?
I'd like to know more about the remote viewing. And
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
You've already explained it to me, and already I've
Well, you have to know this stuff
lost the
before you
thread,
can
but-
really understand why remote viewing is possible.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other start point to the conversation. I integrate this stuff into that, but you have to, you have to get this foundation down, but then it takes it into very different levels. And in fact, I use a remote viewing in my copywriting process all the time, but we'll get into that. So anyway, Mike, thanks for being on the webinar.
Yeah, thank you.
Everybody who watches this, you have any questions, post in the group, and we'll all chit chat. All right. All right, Mike, thanks a lot, brother.
Cool, yeah, thanks.